So now we're going to build out a basic lease, and we need to start with our sets of assumptions. So that's the lease commencement date is going to be 1/1/2020. Then we're going to make the rent commencement date the formula based on the free rent period of 6 months. If you remember the E-date formula, start date is the lease commencement date, goes for 6 months. And that gives us our rent commencement date. Now our lease term will be 10 years. Expiration date will be E-date, the number of years times 12, then minus 1. Now, if we didn't put that minus 1 in, you would get January 1st of the following year. That would be the wrong date. The lease actually ends at the end of 2029. Let's say 6% in leasing commissions, $50 in tenant improvements, 3% annual increases, 10,000 square feet, and base rent of $50. Next, as I showed you before, we have to fill out our monthly schedule and our year. So we go over here, take the lease commencement date, then end of the period, month 1, and round up by 12. Now we just have to make sure that items that are assumptions are labeled appropriately and items that are plugs are as well. So this is a plug. So this should be blue. The others are all formulas or taken from somewhere else. Now we drag this out. For roughly 120 months, should be around there. And as you can see, that formula populates everything perfectly. Now to model this lease, we're going to use the index match formula. And we take commencement date, the E-date function, 1, we get the start date. Make sure that that is formatted as a date. And times 1 plus. Now, the index function wants us to pick from an array of numbers a certain number. It's going to search out from these two numbers what array we're looking for, and it's going to use the match function to find the date. So we're going to look up this value, which is the date, in this array. So it's looking for that 1/1/2020 in this array of numbers. And we want a match type that's not exact, so we're not going to put anything there. And then we want it to pick from column 2, which is the index number. And we want to divide by 12 because we want a monthly number. Now, as you can see, 50 divided by 12 is 417. We have to go back. All of this has to be locked because we're going to drag this all the way out. The only thing that's not locked is the date that we're looking for here. Now, one thing I noticed is that the e-date formula has to be fixed. This is going every 1 month. It needs to be every 12 months. This is going to be an annual schedule. And then once we do that, I'm going to go out to the end, put an X right here. That way, when I copy this formula, I can just hit Control Shift and the right arrow key and Control V, and everything works perfectly. So one of the things that's important to remember with the index match formula is, in this case, we're not looking for an exact match. So sometimes you'll see in Excel, there's the option to add an extra function here, a match type. If I were to put a comma there, it would ask me, it would give me 3 options. But if I leave it blank, it doesn't give me an exact match. Now what that means is it's looking for an approximate match, so it's only going to match the year. So that's why I'm able to keep this 417 for the whole year. And then, as you can see, it increases by 3% at the end of year 2. Sorry, at the end of year 1. Now, if I were to add up all of year 1, as you can see, I get 50 here. If I were to add up all of year 2, I would get 5150, and as you can see, it's counting 12 cells. That means there's 12 months there. Now, with Excel, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's always important to learn more than one way. This is a very good way of doing dynamic lease modeling. That way I can change the annualized rent for each year. And as we've learned, base rents are usually given in $1 per square foot per year in New York and most of the country. There are some outliers. The West Coast, California, sometimes Washington and Oregon will give will give rent numbers in monthly numbers. Now, the other way to model this, and I'm going to leave this here just so you can see this, is to take the base rent, lock that cell, divide by 12 times 1 plus the growth rate raised to the year minus 1. Now, if you raise something to 0, I'm assuming that most people know how to do exponents here, but let's take a look. If I have a 5 and I do 5 raised to 0, it's 1. So what is actually going on with this formula? The growth rate is being raised to 0. The year minus 1. Then in year 2, it'll be 2 minus 1. So it'll be raised to the first year, and then etc. and so forth. Year 3, it'll be 3 minus 1 will be raised to the second. Now I'm going to do what I did before, show you that this works going all the way out. Put an X there. Copy, Control Shift right arrow key, Control V. And there you see, we have an exact match each year. And those are the 2 main ways of modeling the rent. Okay, now we're going to model the free rent. To do that, we're going to use an if-and statement. If the current period begin date is greater than or equal to the lease commencement date, I'm going to insert the and statement. And the current period end date is less than or equal to the rent commencement date, then we're going to get the negative rent. And if that's not true, we're going to get 0. Make sure everything is locked. We need to lock this cell. And let's go to the end and put an X. Drag that out. Now, as you can see, we have 6 months of free rent, or $25. And this is totally dynamic. I can change this, make it 8. That adds another 2 months. Or I could change the date. But it's best to just use the assumptions that we've plugged in.